Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ideas for Us 100th Hive meeting. My name is Kristen Anderson. I am the branch manager of Ideas for Us, and I'm so excited to celebrate this monumental milestone with all of you today. 100 Hive meetings means that for 100 months, we have been engaging the community in a conversation about climate change and empowering them to take action. And I want to take this special occasion to thank all of you so much for being a part of our story, for learning with us at our Hive meetings, for sharing your ideas, for volunteering at our eco action projects and helping us implement these long-term climate solutions. And a very special thank you to everyone who has donated to us and helped keep our story alive, not only in Orlando, but also in our branches all around the world. So from the bottom of our hearts, from me and the rest of the Ideas team, thank you all so much. I want to take this occasion to let you all know that we are fundraising for 100 more hives. So you can click the link and go ahead and donate it if you can, or share it on your Facebook, because we want to get to 100 more hives, because it has been made very evident in our political climate and pulling out of the Paris Agreement today that we need this action now more than ever. It is time for individuals and communities to take it upon themselves to set the standard for what we want to see in our country. And it starts with us. It starts with grassroots organizing like Ideas for Us. So let's do that with 100 more hives. And before I introduce our very special guest and amazing speaker today, I'm going to talk a little bit about Ideas for Us programming. And if you aren't familiar with us, we are an environmental solutions incubator, and our mission is to develop, fund, and scale solutions that solve the world's most pressing environmental and social challenges. And we're able to do this by educating, engaging, and empowering people. We educate through the Ideas for Us Hive, which is what we're doing right now. We bring in an expert to talk about a topic that aligns with one of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. They equip us with the knowledge that we need in order to come up with a local solution to this global problem. And then we engage in a think/do tank where we come up with ideas to actually implement in our community. Then we plan and organize to bring these ideas to life through our eco committees, our volunteers and staff members, as we develop projects and raise awareness to make these projects happen. And then we mobilize volunteers for boots on the ground environmental action. And that can take so many different forms, as every month we do focus on a different pillar of sustainability: energy, water, food, waste, and ecology. And so there's endless possibilities. These are a few examples. We have solar workshops, shoreline restoration projects, tree plantings, waste audits, urban agriculture program, and fleet education for a fleet farming program. And so there's so many more possibilities out there. And we do this because we believe that this information should be free and readily available to communities. Understanding the world you live in is so important, and also understanding that the climate crisis that we're in is even more important. And so we want to educate people, but not just stop there. We want to give people opportunities to take action, because knowing about the climate crisis can be overwhelming, and doing something as an individual is important and is incredible. But we want to bring communities together to feel empowered by working together to implement local solutions to these global problems, and doing that all over the world. So if you like what you see, please consider donating to support this mission. Every dollar donated goes to a dialogue about climate change, eco action projects, and the development of eco enterprises like fleet farming. And if you have a certain project that you're interested in, you can explore our website and see a project in different countries, and every dollar you spend donates exactly to that project. Or you can donate your time by joining one of our eco committees. If any of these align with your skills or your interests, you can help us plan different events and organize the next climate strike. And we want to keep this conversation going all month long, so you can tune into our podcast and hear from sustainable innovators all over the world at anchor.fm/ideas for us. So now I am very honored to give it over to our Executive Director, Clayton Ferreira, and Chris Castro, our President and Founder. So you guys can go ahead and take it away and talk about the celebration of the 100th Hive.
Thank you so much, Kristen, and it is such an honor to be here with everybody virtually. It's amazing. Again, my name is Chris Castro. I'm the co-founder and president of Ideas for Us.
I'm Clayton Ferrara. I'm a biologist, and I'm the executive director of Ideas for Us. And boy, is it wonderful for us to be here. Who would have thought, Chris, 100 hives, for us to have under the belt and to have accomplished as an organization is huge.
It's like we have like a master's degree in community engagement somehow, right?
Yeah, we said that 4 years in, and now here we are like seven or so years in. But I just, before we begin and tell a little bit about some of the origin story, and then I'm going to let Chris jump in and talk about how we've used the Hive, not only as a way of building our movement, but also strategically meeting sustainability goals regionally and beyond. But before any of that, I just want to acknowledge this extraordinary team that we've had that has lent countless hours, definite blood, sweat, and tears to building this organization, and particularly the Hive. We've had so many volunteers over the years. I just want to mention Ricardo Williams, Sharon Hammond, Perrin Curley, Adam Montana, of course, now Lee, Caroline, Kristen, and the rest of the team that's still present today. Jeff Trapani, absolutely. The list goes on and on and on. And when I say I'm leaving a few people out, I'm probably leaving out a dozen, because this community movement is so sincere and so rooted in the values that Ideas for Us have, the belief that there are so many answers to our greatest global problems that exist in the hearts and the minds of people and communities. And if we could only come together someplace once a month for intergenerational, interdisciplinary dialogue, we could pull those different solutions out of people and help them to grow. And none of that would have been possible without the team. So just thank you, everyone, from the bottom of my heart over the years for accomplishing this. We have gone on to do the Hive in universities around the world, at the United Nations, in many different workshops with other organizations and partners in conservation. But it all started with the idea that we wanted to take what was happening inside of the Ideas branches at colleges like UCF or University of Miami or Bridgeport, Connecticut, and to be able to take those wonderful interchanges that were happening with students around solutions on their campuses and bring it to the community. Part of this was because we knew that colleges aren't islands where they're isolated in a city. They're usually a hub, but they should be thought as part of a mosaic. Plus, we were also getting a little older because we were out of college ourselves, and it was kind of weird going onto campus, over the age of 25 to sit in on ideas meetings and help, kids and stuff in planning all this wonderful stuff. So we needed a way to just kind of have a third space, right, where we can bring people together and organize around these ideas. And the concept came about. For those of you who know Central Florida and know Orlando and the Audubon Park community, Chris and I met up at a wonderful bar called Red Light one afternoon and really started to brainstorm about how can we leverage localism. And in Ideas for Us, we have a wonderful perspective on biomimicry. Chris actually did a TEDx on this, Ideas for Biomimicry, and actually our first scholarly paper on ideas published by Columbia University for their International Sustainability Conference as part of their United Nations events last year in 2019. This first paper was actually about how Ideas for Us has used biomimicry. And we thought to ourselves, well, a hive is a very logical model to mimic, right? Because you have all of these different busy bees, right, in our community, making their own honey, accomplishing amazing things. Maybe they're working on a homelessness issue. Maybe they're into permaculture. Maybe they're very good with material science. Maybe they're a great media or marketing promoter, but not everyone is aligned and working towards the same goal. And wouldn't it be great if we had a place where people could come and experience a multitude of topics and return every single month from being out in the community? And what if we did that routinely? So the concept was born, and we found a wonderful, willing helper, Darren from the Urban Rethink community, center at that time, and it was a kind of space for creators and a kind of shared workspace, and it was perfect for what we were trying to accomplish. And I remember, when we can look back at photos on our Ideas Facebook pages, actually, we have some from the very first hive, and it was absolutely packed. And then I think of our last in-person hive in February of 2020, or March of 2020 rather, and it was filled with some of the same people in the room. So it was just amazing how this has really built itself over time.
Yeah.
I think that probably the most exciting thing about reaching Hive 100 is the multitude of action projects we've had a chance to engage the community in. I mean, everything from inventing fleet farming and the concept of how we think of urban agriculture as a sustainability tool here in Central Florida, to trash cleanups, to reverse graffiti, where we put a big water bin on the back of a truck and drove around with a stencil and put it on dirty walls and sprayed it to kind of clean the wall and leave environmental messages behind. All different kinds of artistic representation involving artists in the music community.
Invasive removals, right?
Yep.
And Vukaiva.
Absolutely. The list goes on and on and on. So it's wonderful to have reached this milestone, and certainly something that I didn't expect. Doing anything for 100 months in a row is certainly commendable, but bringing together the community to create these different kinds of action projects really shows the need for this. So, Chris, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about, your reflections on this, of course, but I think it would be great to share how the Hive has helped IDEAS grow, especially through our initial trip to the UN and now your work with the city.
Thank you, Clay. And yeah, I mean, I think one of the most powerful parts around what we've been doing with the IDEAS Hive is us being a speakeasy for innovation. In fact, that was the first tagline for the IDEAS Hive, of trying to become this space where we can innovate and bring people of all ages and all disciplines together and really try to put our differences aside and focus on a core issue at the global level that we can work on locally. And so the think and the do component, right? The think and do tank aspect of this is very powerful. It's not just about coming together and talking and being a think tank. Its purpose is to think up solutions for us to take action in and mobilize our community around engaging and solving these issues. And I think that's the most powerful part of what we do on a monthly basis. As Clay was mentioning, the IDEAS Hive, we started this in Orlando, but quickly when we started to grow this organization, both in the United States and beyond, we realized that this concept of the IDEAS Hive was so cornerstone. It was such a foundational element of what we did as an organization. And it became, and it still is today, one of the premier initiatives that any given branch does on a regular basis. At first we were asked to go to places like Canada. I got asked to go and host the Hive at a big conference up in Guelph, province, right, Guelph, Canada, and got to speak there. And we were asked to go to Germany. We've actually been to Germany twice to engage in hosting the Hive and being able to speak at some conferences. And we've done it in Italy a number of times. And as Clay mentioned, also the UN headquarters in New York City, where multiple years we've been asked to come and engage the UN Youth Assembly, essentially the Youth Assembly of the GA, the General Assembly, and engage that body in coming up with solutions to advance the SDGs, right? This is unbelievable, that experiences that we've had. The one thing I also wanted to talk about is that this initiative of the IDEAS Hive has been so important for the city of Orlando, and I think our region in Central Florida, in moving sustainability and weaving it as part of the DNA and the fabric of our city, right? We have created a culture of community engagement around sustainability. And I'm telling you, I'm a part of peer networks of city leaders around the country and around the world. And the one thing that I often hear is lacking in other cities is the IDEAS Hive. It's this social engagement and community engagement workshop that is persistent, like clockwork, every single month, and something that all of us can look forward to moving forward. And what has happened is this event on a regular basis has risen the knowledge base and the level of understanding that our community has around these problems, right? And what that does is it trickles down into voting, into our own personal experiences and our own, what we buy every single day, right? How we live our lives, and it has directly helped me in the city implement some very bold sustainability policies that would not have happened without this group here tonight. It would not have allowed us to move forward the benchmarking and transparency policy. in the city of Orlando that now requires buildings above 50,000 square feet to benchmark every year their energy and their water consumption and their carbon footprints and release that information to the public marketplace.
Split Oak as well, where
right.
we just had the ballot vote yesterday. 86% of the vote went towards yes, preserving this area. And I remember, I want to say it was maybe January or February at the Hive, we especially took a point to, talk about this issue. We brought in Valerie to come in and speak, the head of Friends of Split Oak. So another example.
And that was just yesterday, right? That we saw that our community, and of course, the beauty about the Hive as well is it's not just members of Ideas for Us or our chapters that we have, or our branches that we have at different universities around Central Florida. It has become the place where our fellow nonprofit and conservation organizations, right, utilize to engage their members, to bring out members of the Sierra Club and the Urban League and Simple Living Institute and Orlando Permaculture. And it has become the Hive, not just for our members, but for the various environmental and social justice organizations to come together on a regular basis and collaborate and partner to move this stuff forward. So I was saying, BWES is one big policy. PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy, that was a huge effort in pushing us forward. And the 100% renewable energy commitment, which Gordian will talk to us more about tonight. That policy in 2017 was passed in large part because of many of you all on this Ideas Hive who had been part of us to come out the city council, to engage our commissioners, to put pressure on myself and the mayor to move these types of things forward. So
and the foam zone.
Right. I just want to end off by expressing gratitude to everyone over the last 100 months, but everybody who's with us tonight, are the Ideas for Us board, the incredible staff, Clay, Lee, Ernest, Lee, Caroline, Kristen. The team in general is incredible. And not just that, the volunteers who also have helped keep this thing going, right? The Ideas Hive has been driven off of volunteer passion for change, as we called it, right? That's like a currency that has been driving this organization from day one, this passion for change that all of us have, that we all want to be a part of driving impact. And that has allowed us to organize, month in and month out. And so a huge thanks to our sponsors, to our supporters, and to the volunteers, and to all of you all who've taken your time out on these Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month events, to spend your time to give us your knowledge, to crowdsource the ideas from our community to solve these problems, and then to take action and roll up our sleeves and make it happen. So thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here for this 100th Hive, and looking forward to learning more from Gordian as well in his remarks.
Well said. And, here's to 100 more, expanding the Hive and bringing it to communities, being able to share this model with others is really what it's all about. And it's certainly a collective effort. So thank you all so much.
Teamwork makes the green work. Let's keep it up.
That's right.
Thank you both so much. It's so incredible to hear about our origins, how far we've come, and also think about how much more there is that we can do. So thank you guys for creating this space for us all to come together and learn about climate change and come up with solutions. And like you said, roll up our sleeves and get to it. So now I have the honor of introducing our amazing speaker today, Mr. Gordian Raacke. He is a clean energy expert. He serves on many advisory committees. He's also the Climate Reality Leadership Corps mentor, and of course, the founder of Renewable Energy Long Island. I originally heard him on a TEDx talk and was so inspired by what he had to say. And it's amazing taking this online platform because we're able to bring in people from around the country and even around the world to kind of talk about different sustainable, innovative ways that we have come up with as a human race and learn from each other. And so we're so thankful to have you here tonight, Mr. Raacke. I'll go ahead and give it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. I have to say it's a special honor to be here and just learning about the amazing work that the Hive has been doing. I mean, you guys rock. This is just awesome what you're doing. And I am particularly happy to be here on a day where you have your 100th anniversary and where we are just one day after the election at a momentous moment in our nation's history, I would think. And we'll find out what happens, I guess, in the next few days. But it's a great pleasure and a great honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm gonna share my screen here, and we'll jump into the PowerPoint that I prepared. And I just again, you guys are doing an amazing job, and I'm awed as to what you have already achieved and what you will be achieving. Thank you for all you're doing, the entire team and the Hive at large. So I wanted to start out by telling you a little bit about where I got started. Tell you a little bit about my story, how I got into this a few decades ago, and then I'm going to just talk about why we need to address climate change and why we need to switch to renewable energy and 100% renewable energy, how we can do this, and where this is already happening. And I just found out from talking to Chris just now that Orlando is doing an amazing job. I just learned that you have a net zero energy goal for 2050, your OUC, your utility company, and you're going to be replacing coal power by 2027 or even before that, and ramp up renewables and energy efficiency. And this is exactly the kind of thing we need, and we need very, very quickly and large scale, and we need it all over the country and in fact all over the world. I'll talk about some of the steps we've taken here and that some other groups may want to take working on these issues. And I'll highlight some of the tools we've been using here in East Hampton, New York, which is where I live and also work here in Long Island, New York. So my story is started when I picked up a New York Times at the newsstand. It was 35 cents at the time. That tells you something about the year. It was on March 25th, 1989. And I read right there on the front page that a huge oil tanker, the Exxon Valdez, had run aground and spilled a huge amount of oil into the Prince William Sound in Alaska. I was livid. I was outraged. I couldn't believe this could happen. And I said to a friend of mine, we talked about this, I said, you know, this really is awful, and this should never happen again. And the people that are responsible for this should be held accountable, should pay reparations, and should do this and that. And he said, Gordian, you know what? It's easy to point fingers at them, and they are certainly responsible for this. But remember one thing, the oil in that tanker was on the way to your gas tank and to was your fuel oil for heating in the winter in your fuel tank. And that really made me think. And that really was my wake-up call. So I started, replacing light bulbs and putting low-flow shower heads in, and learning and reading about what we can do to make our homes more energy efficient. I researched this, learned a lot, and ended up visiting Amory Lovins and his wife Hunter Lovins in Colorado, and they showed me their home and office space that they're in there, and I was so inspired by that my wife and I decided to build our own home. I'm a civil engineer by training, so I always wanted to do that anyhow, but we said we're going to make this the most energy efficient and solar powered home that we can with the technologies available at that time. And it was, I didn't believe it when I saw our first utility bill. Back then it was the Long Island Power Authority, and the bill was $6 per month. And that was just the meter charge, really. So I started talking to people. I would always have my utility bill in my pocket and would show that I had now gotten a job in this field. And I also started Renewable Energy Long Island. So that's the organization that I head up. Our mission is to accelerate the transition to 100% renewable energy. So I'm telling you about all of this because I think it is extremely important to take individual action. And my story really was that I moved from this individual action, swapping out light bulbs and things like that, to got my wake-up call with the Exxon Valdez in '89, but started taking small actions, but quickly realized that, of course, that's just the very beginning. That's the least I can do, but not the most I can do. So I started working with other people, other organizations, and eventually landed a job in this field. And as I said, established Renewable Energy Long Island. And we work in collaboration with many other organizations. And it's that kind of a collaboration and networking and community involvement that I find so effective, working at the grassroots level, at the community level. And that's what I see in the Hive. And that's why I'm so excited to be here tonight with all of you. So my journey from the initial wake-up call to individual actions, and then to working at a larger societal level, I think what we all need to do. We can take these individual steps, but then we need to talk to our neighbors, our friends, our community, and we can then make a difference. If we just swap out light bulbs, we're not going to make it anymore in terms of climate change. Dr. Michael Mann, a very well-known climate scientist that you've probably heard of, is coming out with a new book, and he makes that point very clearly when he writes that we must now turn from changing light bulbs to changing our entire energy system. I couldn't agree more. We now have to change laws, and much more than that, as a matter of fact. We'd have to change the entire system, how we use energy and how we generate energy. So let's move on to now what we're doing and why we have to do things a little bit differently here. What we really do, our business model is to dump right now about 150 million tons of man-made greenhouse gas emissions into this very fragile atmosphere of our planet. And that's as if this were just a convenient dumping site. And that's just not something we can continue to do. Now, to be clear, greenhouse gas emissions come from a number of sources. You see some of them right here. But fossil fuels contribute the largest percentage to the man-made greenhouse gases that we're dumping into our atmosphere. And that's oil burning. We pick this stuff up in the ground, set it on fire, and forget about what happens with the waste product, which is carbon dioxide and other air pollution, of course. The way, just as a quick refresher course, the way global warming and climate change works is that we have a naturally occurring level of CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions in our atmosphere. There's a natural level that keeps the planet at the temperature it should be. It makes it livable. But as we increase the amount of CO2 and other greenhouse gases, more and more radiative heat that emanates from the planet out into space is reflected back onto the planet and makes the planet warmer and warmer. The amount of energy that we're trapping in this way is significant. And to give you a sense of scale, because I never really got that sense of scale, I'm going to show you a pretty graphical illustration here. Dr. James Hansen, the NASA Goddard scientist, did this calculation at the Goddard Institute for Space Studies, and basically says we now trap as much energy in the atmosphere every day that it would be equivalent to detonating 500,000 atomic bombs every day of the year. And if that's not a wake-up call, I don't know. I don't know what is. That's got to stop. Now, you know that today is the day when the US is out of the Paris Climate Agreement. But you also probably know that the Paris Climate Agreement was an agreement among almost all nations of the world to come together and to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by mid-century. The US is the only country now that is not part of that. And I sure hope that come January, we will rejoin. It's not too late to do that. But as of today, this is a sad reality. But the climate agreement, the Paris Climate Agreement also made one thing abundantly clear, which is that we have to stay within the safe amount of global warming, which is 1.5 degrees Celsius, maybe 2 degrees Celsius. And to do that, we have to dramatically decrease carbon emissions. We have to dramatically decrease the amount of annual greenhouse gas emissions we dump into our atmosphere. We can calculate this. We dump about 40 gigatons per year into the atmosphere, and we now have to bring that back down to zero, and very quickly so. If we wanted to start right now, we should have done this decades ago, and we debated and we hemmed and hawed, and we didn't really decrease our emissions. It would have been a lot easier if we would have started this in 2020 or so. We get a glide path that would have been much more comfortable. Now it's sort of like a pilot approaching the landing at an airport, and she comes on the microphone and says, put on your seatbelts, put your tray table in the upright position. We're going to now begin our descent to JFK Airport, let's say. If you miss that point, it's going to be a pretty rough descent if you wait too long. And in this case, we could miss it entirely, and the consequences would be dramatic, irreversible, catastrophic effects of climate change. So we need to reduce emissions by at least 40 gigatons a year on this curve here to get down to net zero. If we wait another 8 years, it'll be impossible to do this. Some people say we can't make it to 1.5 degrees. If we can keep it under 2 degrees, it's not good, but we will survive, hopefully. So here's what the curves look like if we want to keep it under 2 degrees. We gotta start right now, and we got to reduce emissions at least 6% per year, as you can see here. So we've got really, we got to act very quickly. There's a small window of opportunity now. That's just a decade or so, just a few years really to get started. We got to get started right now. We got to get up to speed and scale. And I want to just talk about the speed aspect of this here and give you one example that I was involved in, and that's back in 2000 here in Long Island. We had not a single grid-connected solar electric system installed, and we started a program here, the Long Island Solar Roofs Initiative, and worked with the utility company and community groups and many others to make solar roofs a more common sight on the island. We now have 50,000 solar roofs installed on the island, which is great. But if you figure out that, we have about 1 million rooftops, 1 million roofs on the island, We have about 3.1 million people here. You can do the math. How long would it take to get solar roofs on each of these rooftops? Hypothetically, it would take us 400 years at the speed that we've been deploying solar systems here on the island. That's not going to work. So we have to think of new approaches. For example, this was an entirely voluntary effort, of course. How about making solar rooftops mandatory wherever it's feasible? So we have to change our approach and dramatically speed up our efforts. And we also have to dramatically scale up our efforts. And that means we have to implement new policies, building codes, climate laws, and other approaches, just like you've been doing in Orlando, for example, or we are now doing in New York, and I'll get to that a little later. We have to electrify everything in our buildings. Our transportation has to be electric, electric cars, electric trains, everything, electric trucks, and eventually electric airplanes and other carbon-free fuels for air travel. And we have to then produce these fuels and produce this electricity with 100% renewable energy. So that's the job we got in front of us. It's a big job, but we have all the tools to make that happen today. And you know what? There's great support for 100% renewable energy. 1 in 3 Americans actually lives in a community that has committed to be 100% clean and renewable energy. And when you look at the public opinion on this, 2/3 of all voters support the concept of 100% renewable energy within 10 years, which is awesome. And now the question comes up, well, this is a nice idea. Yeah, it would be good if we could do that, but can we actually do this? Do we have enough technologies and enough renewable energy sources to make this happen? And the good news is, yes, we can. This is data from NREL here. The data was compiled by Environment America. You can see here very clearly that they analyzed the technical potential of rooftop PV, offshore wind, onshore wind, concentrating solar, utility scale PV, that's solar farms, and calculated how many kilowatt hours or gigawatt hours all of these things could generate. And guess what? Here is what the US consumes annually in terms of electricity. So even if we now switched everything to be driven by electricity, we would have plenty of renewable energy to power our economy. And the same is true on a global scale. Here you see the wind turbines, and wind technology could generate our worldwide electricity consumption 40 times over. And wind energy is growing rapidly. We still got to scale it up. That curve's got to go even steeper and steeper. Solar, the same picture, and we still got to scale that up. So 100% renewable. It's not a pipe dream anymore. It's not a crazy idea. It's now happening all over the country. There are 12 states in the US alone that have adopted clean and renewable energy goals. And I know you're probably tired of looking at maps showing these states in red and blue, but this is a different kind of a map, and that's the one that I like to keep an eye on every day. This is happening all over the country, not just at in states, but in communities, in towns, cities, and villages, at the universities. And you can look up these maps. I'll show you some resources later on. This is happening all over the world, in fact, and that is so encouraging. So this is a movement that can change the trajectory, can help us solve the climate crisis. And here are just a few resources that might be of interest to you. The 100% network, I highly recommend, and all the other ones here, you can sign up get on those mailing lists, get involved, get engaged. Start with changing a light bulb or maybe putting solar panels on your home, but then get engaged here. Now I want to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing here on Long Island in the state of New York. The towns on the east end of Long Island, the town of East Hampton and the town of Southampton, have set some pretty aggressive renewable energy goals. East Hampton set its goal in 2014 and set that goal for both electricity by 2020. We missed that a little by about 3 years. We hope to be there by 2023 when an offshore wind farm that is going to be built about 30 miles east of Montauk Point will be coming online and will be interconnected right here in the town of East Hampton. And then we also have a goal that aims to switch the heating sector and the transportation sector to renewable energy, or at least generate the equivalent of renewable electricity for those two sectors. And the town of Southampton here, our neighboring town, has set a similar goal, so far only on electricity, but basically the same idea here. And we didn't think this was going to catch on so quickly, but just last year, the state of New York, our Governor Cuomo, signed with Mr. Gore, Al Gore, as a witness, signed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which sets very similar goals, but at a much greater, at a state level. And I'll show you some of the highlights of that. The Climate Act is mandating. It's not an aspirational goal. It is a mandate to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at least 85% below 1990 levels by mid-century. We have interim goals on this one, 40% reduction by 2030, just 10 years from now. We'll be coming down on our emission curves in New York State dramatically. We have specific goals for electricity. It's got to be 100% zero carbon by 2040. And again, an interim goal, 70% renewable by 2030. That's a tall order, but we can do it. And then we have technology goals for offshore wind, 9,000 megawatts of offshore wind. That's enough to power 6 million homes here in New York. And we have 6,000 megawatts of distributed solar and 3,000 megawatts of energy storage, et cetera. We also have energy savings built into this Climate Act. And importantly, it also has commitments written into law and specific targets for climate justice and a just transition of our workforce. For example, 35% of the investments made have to be in frontline communities and communities of colors and low-income communities, et cetera. So that's a very important aspect of our law here in New York State. Now, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the steps we've taken to get these kind of things done here on Long Island in East Hampton, and maybe that can be of use to other folks that want to do something like this in their communities. The first thing I think of when I look back as to how we got started here locally is that we prepared the ground, and that just takes time. So what I find what is extremely important is to have and maintain and build trusted relationships with the community, with organizations in the community, with government, with elected officials. And that goes a long way and builds a base for proposing certain policies or 100% renewable energy goal. If you're a known entity in your community and you have these relationships and people know they can trust you, that goes a long way. Then, of course, you also want to work with activists in the community. You cannot do this alone. It takes initially just a handful of people, but then you need to grow your network. You need to grow your set of allies. So you want to reach out to people early and often and keep them engaged and involved when you're building these networks. And of course, you need to work with government and other networks, larger networks, statewide networks, national networks, because they can provide really valuable resources to your effort. And you've got to build a lot of structures, and you need a lot of resources. You're going to get a lot of help, but it is a lot of work. And lastly, but not least, it is, I think, extremely important to be inclusive, to pay attention to diversity in your circles, and to pay attention and incorporate environmental justice and social justice principles in your work. Then secondly, what we did here is we made a sketch. Every community is different, and that means, offshore windmills are going to play a big part if you're in a coastal community and your sea bottom is relatively shallow. That may not be the case somewhere else. And in our case, we did a community energy potential assessment. And we found that for us, offshore wind is going to be the key driver to reach our 100% renewable energy goals. We probably could not do it, or it would be extremely difficult if we could not tap into our offshore wind resource here. You then want to identify the tools you have to bring about the changes that need to be made. I'll show some examples of that later. You assemble a portfolio of resources and programs, and then you have a better idea what kind of goal to set. And if you do a little bit of that homework ahead of time, you will be better enabled to establish goals. So you want to define your scope. Are you just looking at electricity, or are you just looking at doing this for government facilities, or maybe for your university? Or are you doing this community-wide? In our case, our goals are set community-wide, including government, of course. Do you want to have this applicable to electricity only, or heating sectors, the mobility sector, et cetera, transportation? And those are important discussions and decisions to be made. And of course, what's your timeline? Or do you want to have a set of timelines? Do you want to have interim goals to track progress? Those are all very important decisions. And then there was a fourth one that I can't remember now. Oh, no, I know what it is. The fourth one is really simple. You got to do it. And that's the hard part. That is the hard part. But it's also the fun part, when you're actually trying to figure out how to get shovels in the ground, how to build the infrastructure we'll need to make this happen. That's what makes me get up in the morning and get up and get to work. So we started out with a basic, baseline emissions inventory that we had from 2010. And in our case, that inventory showed that about half, a little bit more than half of our greenhouse gas emissions come from electricity, generating the electricity that we consume, and heating and transportation, about a quarter each or so. And we also have an assessment of the emissions from waste management. And so that's, in a way, that's good news, because it's relatively easy to generate the electricity from renewables. It gets a little more difficult in the heating sector, but we now have heat pump technologies and things like that. So it is possible, and gets a little more difficult in the transportation sector. But of course, it's a challenge to get there. And of course, it's a challenge to get there so quickly, because as I said earlier, we've waited too long, really. Now we got to rush. We got to do this quickly, but we got to do it. So here is a quick sketch of the kinds of programs, the kinds of tools we put together here in our community to make this all happen. And I can't highlight all of them, but I'm going to jump into a couple of them just to give you an idea. For example, on the home retrofit side, here's a graph. We try to make people understand how much energy you're wasting in your typical home by just having a leaky building envelope and this energy, just coming out of all over the place, out of the attic and the basement rim joists, and around the doors and windows that are not properly sealed. And we offer programs, free energy audits and energy assessments with high-tech tools that we're now able to use to pinpoint where that energy is being lost. We offer blower door tests and things like that, and then people can decide what they need to do to make their homes more energy efficient. And there's financing available for that, so you can do that actually without any upfront costs, and you can pay it off by using the savings, the utility savings that you will have. We worked with a utility company offering free smart thermostats for air conditioning and heating that can save you money, and also in our case reduce peak demand in the summer, which is a problem here. And we also were able to offer significant rebates for more energy efficient pool pumps. We have a lot of people with pools here, and that makes a big difference in how much energy we all consume. And also, East Hampton Township is actually the first municipality on Long Island to have not just one, but two large-scale energy storage facilities right here in town. Each one of these can store enough energy to power 5,000 homes for 8 hours during peak times in the summer and at other times. And so, of course, these batteries can store excess wind energy or excess solar energy and deliver it when it's needed. And as you may know, these types of energy storage systems are also now available for home use. Of course, we have a great interest in getting as many solar roofs installed as possible. We offer a bulk discount purchase program. We call it the East Hampton Solarize program, which offers a discount. The town selects a solar installer after issuing a request for proposals and vetting these proposals from installers. It makes it much easier for people who are interested and able to have solar installed on their roof to go about that. As you can see here, this is just an area actually where I live in East Hampton. We have a lot of tree cover, and it's not always possible to install solar. So here in this screenshot, there's really just about one home which would be able to go solar. And we make that much more accessible to people with our Solarize program. And we are also the first municipality on the South Fork to have a 1.1 megawatt solar farm installed. You see our town board proudly cutting the ribbon here. And we're looking at other things like solar parking lot covers and things like that. We got some wind farms already and farm fields here in East Hampton, but we're really looking forward to have our South Fork wind farm being installed, which will generate enough power for 70,000 homes. That by itself will generate more than far more than 100% of our community-wide electricity consumption in East Hampton. That will push us over the finish line with our goal. So these are our tools, our toolbox, our East Hampton energy portfolio. It will be different in every community, I'm sure, but it is something that's happening all over the country now as we speak, and all over the world, as I showed you earlier. this idea that we can power our lives, power our economy with renewable energy sources may seem like a newfangled idea, but this is the Hook Mill right here in East Hampton, and it shows that this is not such a newfangled idea. We've been doing this for hundreds of years. We can do this. We can do this again. And I just want to close by saying, I feel really that we are so lucky to live exactly at the time in human history when we're facing catastrophic climate change. We're facing the greatest challenge that humanity has ever faced. And it's exactly at this moment in time that all of us are alive and we can come to the rescue. We can solve the climate crisis. And so what I say is, let's get to work. Let's do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was so inspiring. It's beyond incredible to see the impact that you've made and the things that we can do together if we just get to work. So thank you so much. We have time for just a couple of questions. I'm going to start with asking, what do you think is the most efficient method of renewable energy? You talked a lot about solar and wind. Like, do you have a preferred method that you think is the most efficient to transition to?
It's a great question. And it really depends on where you are. As I said, in our case, offshore wind is the most suitable large-scale way to get to 100%. Because we have limited resources on land. We live in a very densely populated area here in Long Island in general. And we don't want to clear cut all the beautiful woods we have. And, even if we did that, I don't think it would be the right thing to rely solely on one technology. So it really depends on your community, and also you want to have a diversified portfolio of technologies, because as we all know, the sun shines when the wind may not be blowing, and the wind may be blowing when the sun doesn't shine at night, and so forth. So a diversified portfolio of energy resources that's appropriate to the community is the right choice.
Absolutely. Yes. And here in the Sunshine State, we do utilize that sunshine for some solar panels. So one more question. Could you give some insight on carbon sequestration? Is clean energy enough to not need to develop this technology at large scale?
It's a tough one. Yes, if we can figure out how to sequester carbon cost effectively and without significant environmental risks and dangers, then we should use that tool. We're not quite there yet, it seems. However, if we don't get renewable deployment ramped up to scale and do that very quickly, we will really have no choice but to sequester additional carbon. And to get to 1.5 degree, we may already at some point have to use that. But the technology is still very, very expensive. And in some cases, there are questions about whether we can store that carbon, sequester that carbon safely in a way that it won't be re-emitted into the atmosphere. So I'm not an expert on carbon sequestration by any means. It's a technology we need to keep an eye on. And if we can make it work and make it work cost effectively and safely, that would be a good thing.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of times people rely on the technology to come out eventually, when it's like we should be using what we have now and see where science goes, and that would be great too.
Exactly right, Kristen.
Yes. And one more question. How can we inspire young people who want to pursue careers in solar and other clean energy jobs?
Well, I would say, first of all, you're going to be the hero, the one with the cape, saving this planet. And also, it's a great field to be in, because that's where a lot of the new and much better paying jobs are. So we're seeing that here in New York. where the state has already committed to building thousands of megawatts of wind farms, and projects are moving forward. They're hiring. And those jobs are well-paying jobs. The labor folks are fully behind this here in New York, I can tell you that, because those jobs are often or mostly union jobs. And yeah, it's the way of the future. And you're going to be on the winning side of technology, and you're going to be in jobs that really are exciting and pay well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And I lied. I'm sorry. We do have more questions. Compared to Florida, do you think that New York has a higher demand for renewable energy?
A higher demand. Well, if you want to go 100%, what you do is you figure out what your total energy consumption is in your community or in your state. And then you got to figure out how to generate those millions and millions of kilowatt hours from the various types of renewable energy technologies. So I'd have to look up what the total energy consumption in Florida is and compare that to New York. My guess would be that New York would be higher, but I don't know. I'd have to check that. But anybody can look that up. You can just Google that and it'll come up. But the trick is to generate 100% of those 100% of those kilowatt hours from renewables. We are counting for that on an annual basis, by the way. So when we meet our energy consumption measured on an annual basis with the same amount of kilowatt hours or energy units produced from renewables, we have achieved our 100% renewable energy goal.
I will close this out with one last question. So you showed an interesting graph about where we should have started and where we are now and where we need to be in order to stay within the 1.5 degree change. So how do you see a successful transition happening in the United States? And do you think it's feasible that we do it within the time frame that we have?
Well, as I showed you, the state of New York and other states, California and others, have climate laws now. I think the state of New York is probably the most progressive and forward-looking one, because our goal, our mandates include not just electricity, but all sectors of our economy. We know that we got to get essentially to zero by mid-century, at least 85%, maybe 90, 95%. And so we need to make those laws. We need to mandate that utility companies, industries, and everybody else really needs to work on bringing these emissions down and generating the energy from carbon-free resources. In some sectors, it's easier than in others. In electricity, relatively speaking, it's very it's easy. And then we got to get to work and make that happen. And you run into obstacles every day. People say, I'm all for renewable energy, but that solar farm, can you just not put that right here where I live? Can you just put that somewhere else? That wind farm, I don't really want to have that cable coming into onshore right here in my community. Can you just move that somewhere else? We got to work this out. We got to work together in each community to make this happen. And we got to make it happen. The alternative is really not an option.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your inspiring words, for showing us the incredible work that you've done, inspired some action here in Orlando and hopefully across the country and around the world. So thank you so much for your time. Everybody, please check out the website, Renewable Energy Long Island, see more about their programming and what they're doing over in New York, and how we can transition that to here in Florida. So thank you again.
Thanks so much. It was my pleasure. And thanks for having me. You guys are doing great work. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our upcoming programming, because climate action never stops. So on November 6th, we have the introduction to the climate crisis with Christy Folk, your local Lorax. She's a climate reality leader and Fridays for Future Orlando director. And it's always important to get back to the basics and really talk about what we're working with. So you can join us on Facebook Live for that. And also, you can do good with burritos and get some Chipotle this Saturday, November 7th, from 5 to 9 at the Orange Avenue Orlando Chipotle. I hope you get hungry on Saturday and help support us because, it's never a bad time for Chipotle. So please come out and support us at the Orange Avenue location. And this eco action for this month is going to be a Thanksgiving meals for the previously homeless on November 18th with Pathlight Home. We're going to show up and package some Thanksgiving meals and then in a COVID-friendly way, hand it out to people who live there, who most of them, if not all of them, were previously homeless at this affordable housing unit. And so a lot of people in this situation don't have family or friends to turn to. So we're going to give them some good old human kindness, hand the food at their door, knock on it, take 6 feet back and say, Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you are well. And so please sign up for that on our Facebook. We only have a few slots left, and only sign up if you're serious about coming so that we can make sure to show up with the full number of volunteers. So thank you again. And come out to the pop-up market at the Audubon Church, Saturday, November 14th, 9 to 1 p.m. And you can buy some local fresh produce. And you can come volunteer with us at the same garden that you bought the produce from on Saturday, November 21st from 9 to 1. Our next hive is going to be about a personal passion of mine, plastic pollution. You can learn about it from Charlie Rolski, the Director of Science at Plastic Oceans International. Learn about not only the plastic pollution problem in the ocean, but also the array of problems that come from it. So please come out to that. You can hear about how you can also just be sustainable and reduce the problem in your own life. And last month, we talked about electing climate solutions. We'll see how that went, but in reality, but it was great to hear from Dr. Patricia DeMarco as she talked about not only doing it nationally, but also in your own community. And change really does start with not only just individuals, but community organizing, like what we're doing at Ideas for Us, and it's happening all over the country. So you can check that on our YouTube and also our Facebook old videos. And since it was our ecology month, we did a tree planting at Quest Inc. We planted 15 beautiful fruit trees and helped revamp the area. It's absolutely beautiful. And we did a shoreline restoration with Stalking Savvy to learn about the ecology of our shorelines in Florida and also restored the area. If you're interested in growing your own garden at home, you can sign up for a one-on-one virtual consultation on our website. It's only a $30 donation. It's encouraged, but not required, of course. And you can learn about how to successfully grow native plants from our very own Lee Perry. And our edible landscape team is back. If you're interested in any of these services, please check out their website. You can get a consultation and talk to them about how you see the future of growing food at your own home. And thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It's great to have you all a part of our story. Like I said before, it's amazing to get to 100 hives, and I'm looking forward to 100 more. So thank you all so much for coming, and I hope you have a great evening.